Gertrude Ticho Memorial Award and Lecture recognizes and fosters the work of a promising early career psychoanalyst who has made contributions to the field through teaching, writing, research, and applied or clinical work. The Ticho Lecture was inaugurated in June 2006 with the generous support of the Ernst and Gertrude Ticho Charitable Foundation. For those who are able, please join us from 6:30 to 7:30 this evening for the Ticho Memorial Reception, which will be held in the Regency foyer off the lobby. We will have refreshments and an opportunity to celebrate this year's recipient, Dr. Madeleine Lansky. To introduce Dr. Lansky, I welcome Dr. Harriet Wolfe. Thank you.
It's a very special privilege to introduce to you the 2025 Ernst and Gertrude Ticho Prize winner. This is an award, as you heard, to an early career psychoanalyst whose career promises to enrich our field and its impact on the people we serve. We know the winner's name, Dr. Madeleine Lansky. Getting to really know her as a colleague, friend, and psychoanalytic thinker is an inspiring experience. It involves discovering in a bright, hopeful way what psychoanalysis can bring to difficult life experiences, whether in ourselves or our fellow human beings. Madeleine brings to life how psychoanalysis can restore a sense of balance, understanding, and relational connection both inside and outside the consulting room. In honoring Madeleine Lansky today, a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst from San Francisco, we learn how she has used psychoanalytic theory to create a highly effective, concrete set of public interventions through the metaphor of composting, as rooted in Bion's theory of transformation of beta elements into alpha elements. It's a special honor to capture Madeleine's person and her early psychoanalytic career that has led to this very deserved Ticho Award. I've had the pleasure of knowing her well for over 20 years. First when she was a psychiatry resident at UCSF, and then as a fellow of the APSA Fellowship Program. She's won several awards along the way, but maybe her early 1989 award on graduation from high school predicted what was to come. She received the University of Pennsylvania Benjamin Franklin Book Award for being a scholar, innovator, and community servant on graduation from Brentwood School in Los Angeles, California. Madeleine is a loving, authentic, driven, and inspiring person. She's a well-trained psychoanalyst who is making unique contributions. She has a keen intelligence, a long-standing commitment to public service and to the environment, and she is the daughter of an analyst known to many of us, Mel Lansky, who's done seminal work on shame. I can only guess how his professional focus worked in the family, but I imagine it supported Madeleine in becoming a brave and creative person who does not know shame or simply uses her awarenesses of its inhibitory effect to break through barriers in ways that many traditional analysts would never think of. She finds a language that non-psychoanalysts can use to understand and create a culture of care. Madeleine will focus today on her work with Frontline mental health and primary care providers. I think she will also describe perhaps similar work with youth who want to change the system, but also sustain their humanity in the context of violence. Many of Madeleine's consultees, who often become co-consultants, are here today to honor her. They include frontline workers and students who, until they were exposed to her and her kitty bunny composting metaphors, had little understanding that the aggression that was coming their way in a clinical setting said more about the patient than about the caregiver. The caregiver might feel very ashamed or even shattered at moments by the idea or feeling they've done too little or something wrong because their efforts resulted in a patient's rage, which from a psychoanalytic perspective is predictable or at least understandable. I want to give you a glimpse of Madeleine's academic journey. She majored in religion at Wesleyan University and headed to medical school at Mount Sinai in New York City. However, a meaningful event occurred. The Mount Sinai Humanities and Medicine program granted Madeleine a year off before starting medical school. She spent it teaching outdoor education to 5th and 6th graders, ages 9 to 12, in the tide pools and redwood forests of Northern California. There, she delighted in teaching while hiking and singing songs about soil and water cycles. This experience made a lasting impression on her and informed the work you will hear about today. She witnessed firsthand how integrating nature, science, fun, and interpersonal connection provided psychological bolstering and academic confidence in her young students. Madeleine went on after medical school to do psychiatry residency and a child fellowship at UCSF. 2 years out of adult and child training in 2005, she started analytic training. Unlike her previous more or less linear progression, her analytic training took twists and turns and was completed first in 2021. Her approach was interrupted by her continuous reflection on the meaning of psychoanalytic work and on questions such as, how is psychoanalysis relevant to the deep-running problems that systems of care, human and environmental, encounter and perpetuate? On a formal level, Madeleine is an associate professor at UCSF School of Medicine and a faculty mentor to medical students interested in psychiatry. Outside the academic structure, she works as a consultant to the broader caregiver and civil rights community, as a child and adolescent psychiatry integrated behavioral health consultant, through the primary care psychiatry's consultation program in Alameda County Behavioral Sciences in the East Bay. She is also the founder and principal of Profound Sustainability, Educational and Consulting Services. Madeleine has found a language and a medium to bring alive the primitive human responses to pain and suffering, and also their potential for transformation into the very material that sustains life and growth. She uses the metaphor of human waste, of poop or shit, to introduce the fact that it is exactly this that composts waste into nutrition. She uses the metaphor of a traumatized rabbit to capture the suffering person, and the metaphor of the kitten who wants to take care of the rabbit but can become frightened by the rage of the traumatized rabbit and its apparent refusal of care. Madeleine has created about a 30 to 35-minute video about the process of transforming a desperate internal or interpersonal experience into one of growth. Her video is entitled The Kitty Bunny Talk, aka Managing Compassion Fatigue in Trauma-Informed Care. She encourages each of us to watch it, and I suggest more than one viewing. It is inspiring and it is comprehensive. The analyst, speaking in the background, uses a language each of us analysts will understand and integrates it through visuals and also some simple language into a message about the nature of work with traumatized persons and its transformative potential. It's been translated into several languages already. She may pull examples today from the English version. And I was going to remind you of the cocktail reception, which has already been amply done. So let's welcome Dr. Madeleine Lansky, the 2025 Ticho Award winner.
Wow. Just kind of taking that in. Okay, bye. No. I'm happy you're here, and I'm so happy to see you. And it's really my hope and intention that we have fun and that we try to laugh. It's, I don't know if you noticed, it's kind of scary out there. And these are the slides I made because I didn't quite get them ready before the fires hit my hometown of Los Angeles and my family evacuated and then started having medical things happen in response. So that's how it is though, right? Like we've known about climate change since 1956. Part of that prediction would be mass scale natural disasters, mass scale pandemics. And so a lot of this work, and the reason you're going to see me keep trying to laugh is not to be rude or disrespectful, but to continue to try to find ground in the groundlessness. And so I'm going to be inviting some other people who are kind of good at that, some Lanskys, or as my dad would say, the little Lanskys. Not all of them, because they're kind of shy. But I'm going to bring some in because I think we're going to have to find ground, think about the ground, and reconnect with how things really work, which is natural science, which is indeed what I taught 5th and 6th graders. Now, my father, for those of you who knew him, and it's so nice to see people in the room who knew him, who are telling me Madeleine Lansky stories, keep them coming. My father loved to talk about art, music, boxing, sports, anything, and just loved to think about psychoanalysis. My mom's an artist and a writer and an art historian, so it's just a household sort of filled with everything constantly going on at once. They were also both raised in blue-collar families, and both my grandfathers lied about their ages and said they were young enough to enlist to kick Hitler's butt. So you can imagine there's going to be a constant mixing of these components of the art and the academic world with just the kind of salt of the earthness of things. So my father loved this painting by Mori Sosen, who is from the Shijo era in the Edo period in Japan. This is Monkey with Cricket. And the way he would have explained this, and I want to offer this to you, and you can find this picture online. It's my screensaver on my county phone for my consulting job, just to remind myself. So this is a mother monkey, Sosen loved painting monkeys, with a cricket in her hand. I don't know if it's a mother, but for my dad, it's a mother. And there's a baby, and the mother's showing the baby how to look at the cricket. Okay, so what was so important for my father to point out about this piece is that they're on a cliff about to fall. And I think of this as the psychoanalytic task, right? You're on a cliff about to fall. I don't know if it's 2 feet or 2,000 feet, but to somehow, and boy, does that branch look crackly and weak. Okay, I sort of feel like with one foot she's like, where's the other place to go? But we're looking at the cricket, okay? So this is about somehow finding enough spaciousness amidst the chaos to do that kind of simultaneous survival and contemplating and thinking and observing, maybe what Freud would have called an even hovering view. Because I come from an artistic family, and because I love lowbrow things, and because I just put my slides together this morning, because I was in ER last weekend, I made this beautiful thing for you. But I looked at it a lot, and I decided it's a donut in honor of my father, who would like everybody to know he's gruntled, he's retired, and he is grappling with hypoischemia and hypodenusia. So we're feeding him a steady diet of ice creams and donuts. So I've made a donut in his honor. It's the Compost Hackman cycle. And this is basically, I've had to really think a lot about when I found these projects out in the world. And one of them was in Haiti, and another one was at Occupy San Francisco. And then I went into Oakland. And I was always looking for a way to kind of find this crossroads of environmental sustainability and mental health with a psychoanalytic bent. And I'm going to say environmental sustainability because I think it's really easy to talk about how everything's falling apart. And it's a lot harder to talk about how we're going to rebuild. But actually, one thing I learned about being an outdoor educator talking about natural science is using the basic scientific principles, using the building blocks of things like the soil cycle, the water cycle, even the fire cycle, which is hard for me to spit out those words, but it's true. You know, that nature has a way it does things. And that one of the challenges perhaps we've run into in the world we've made is we've been in a kind of paranoid, schizoid, I'm going to give it / manic defiance of some natural realities that maybe older cultures, more indigenous cultures have known all along, and created worlds that were built more in concert or unison with those principles. So this is my offering and interpretation that connecting with these principles, being honest about these principles can be helpful to us, and also saying that this exists within psychoanalysis. So I'm going to be talking about beta elements, which is that real B at the top. And this was Wilfred Bion's idea of this poopy, inchoate, creepy element that just could spray over anything. It's trauma. And I learned about it from my father when I was suddenly thinking about quitting my child fellowship. I was working with severely disturbed kids. Lots of them were sexually and physically abused. I was getting so overwhelmed, I didn't feel like I could handle it, so I, called to announce. And he said, oh, that's the beta elements. And I was like, what? And he said, oh yeah, it's just shit spray. Yeah. So he guided me to Bion's work on this, and I stayed. Not only did I stay, I was like, hey guys, listen, this is beta elements. And I found that the teams could solidify and get more agile and flexible and responsive if you can just name how awful this feels and find a way to start to digest it, right? So that's an alpha. Bion spoke about alpha function, which is a way to address beta elements, make use of them, and start to try to put them into building blocks. That I actually live in a city where we do compost our food scraps. It's very, very cool. And if you're not doing it, I recommend you push for it. It's awesome. And I've worked on a lot of organic farms and lived in a lot of natural settings where people do compost their stuff. So you put the scraps or, in a bin, and they go through this period of breaking down. About 18 months later or so, depending on how you put in various elements of nitrogen and carbon, you get soil, okay? And that is a natural nutrient cycle. So I'm kind of thinking that that's how a good psychoanalysis works, or even a psychodynamically approached treatment, or a psychodynamically approached intervention for a system repair. Hence my use of the alpha for alpha function. And as you kind of breathe your way through the poo smell and the shit spray, that you're actually kind of holding it together enough. That's why I like laughing. I like to make it silly. I like to make sure the pictures are stupid. So that we can let it simmer down. It's going to take a minute. And look for those seeds. And get creative and kind of free associative about how those seeds are going to come together and what's going to assemble. And you're not going to know. My mother was a writer, and she told me that the way that she and my father wrote what they wrote, because they're both incredibly prolific writers, is they would just write ideas down on little scraps of paper, which were everywhere, and then they would lay them out, and then they would be like, my mom would say, and then your mind will assemble it. And that's how they created, which I pro tip. Go write some stuff. But I really, when I look at the seeds of what I have, wait, let me go back and talk about the last thing. I got a little excited because I was excited to talk about Grandpa. The last thing is K negative K. This is a Bion idea. Bion was raised in India, and then he was in Britain. He's part of the middle school. Then he moved to LA. My dad actually interviewed him. Apparently he had a double bed in his office. But I love this idea of K negative K. K is what the analyst and the analysand know, where they get to together. So it's like you get these seeds, you grow some stuff, you get there together. I think this is kind of actually maybe where things fall apart. And I think Bion was helpful because he said, just as soon as you know something, get that you know nothing. Just as soon as, and then that's true in a treatment. The second you guys are riding high, you're in blind spot land, okay? So I like to remember that once you know you don't know, ha ha ha, laugh, laugh, breathe, because it's gonna be kind of a bummer. And then get ready. You don't know where they're coming, but they're coming. Beta time. Yeah. Oh, I look at your paper. You know where they're coming. Your newspaper, I mean. Do you know what? I'm sorry. Someone just looked at me like, it's a paper. It's a newspaper. I'm old. So then we're going to go back. There's going to be more shit spray, press, repeat. That's life. Then you'll die. And then you, hopefully, will compost. How did I discover I was so into composting? Because this guy was like my favorite guy, my grandpa. And he didn't get buried in the earth, as is part of our tradition. We have a tradition that you're buried in a pine box, that it returns to the earth, you do it very quickly, and that is the cycle of things. And I found that when I was at his funeral, and my relatives found a way to all be in like shelves together. I don't really know why. It is weird. And I think maybe they didn't have enough money for plots. I also wonder if there was something as immigrants about not feeling entitled to taking that much space. But I remember when I lost him at the age of 16 to very advanced lung cancer, he not only painted houses with lead paint, but was a chain smoker. That there was the most disquieting part was that he wasn't going to go back into the earth. That was the most upsetting part. So here he is. I never saw a fur coat on that lady ever. They like saved every penny. They put me through med school. She sold kid shoes at the May Company on Wilshire. And he painted houses. And this is their wedding picture. And you can see he's like a little. Well, why? This guy was in a shtetl in Eastern Europe. They were constantly under attack. There were a lot of massacres. My grandmother's father had actually run like an intricate homing pigeon operation where they would send pigeons throughout this region to inform other people that the Cossacks were coming to start a pogrom. And so I imagine that even though she was incredibly nerdy, I'd like to say she was a hot nerd, that he really liked that about her family. And he quit 4th grade in the US when he got here because the teacher made fun of his accent, which reminds me so much of like the little kids I work with in the East Bay in Oakland. They're like, like they just get really hurt feelings, which is why I kind of laugh when Harriet said that there was no shame. I actually think probably we're very shame sensitive, and that's how we know about shame. And maybe these are survival techniques for using your shame, looking at the beta elements of what hurts you most to figure out your next steps, your response. So his response was to get in the street with the other people who were not considered white 100 years ago, Italians, Irish, Jews, and maybe some people who still aren't considered white. And they would throw down. They would work all week really hard, and then on the weekend they would like fight each other, I think, and they had like boxing circuits together. They'd go to jail and then start work again on Monday. And this was his like life. He was really, really into boxing. So I don't know if you can see that he's kind of, and I want to give that to you, that's a position to own. There he is. Too old for the military, but signed up and I think pretty happy. This is the thing that made him happiest. Joe Louis, 1938. There was a huge boxing match he was fighting international heavyweight champion Max Schmeling, and this was posited as U.S. versus Nazi Germany. And I'm just going to quote my grandfather, 2 minutes and 4 seconds, down. He just loved to talk about it, how Joe Louis just wiped him out so fast. And looking back, when he was worried about the world or he was talking about stuff, he would start to walk around. He was 5'4", because he was malnourished, because he ate like either a slice of bread a day or out of the garbage. And he also told me that German soldiers would sometimes give the kids food, which kind of informed the work I'm doing with Kitty Bunny and the decision to put it into a lot of languages. Because sometimes it's someone on the other side of the line that keeps your grandfather alive and makes it so you're here today, right? So he liked to talk about, he would walk around and go, if I meet an anti-Semite. And then the other thing he would do is he'd go, it's hard to do with the mic, he'd go, come on. And so what this meant was, it's time to practice your boxing. And he'd be like, make sure it's straight or you'll break your arm. And then we'd practice. You never know. Okay? You never know. That guy's so cool. I spent a lot of time reading about him, and then the people I was practicing this were like, stop talking about Joe Louis. And I was like, I really want to talk a lot about Joe Louis. You might want to talk a lot about Joe Louis too, so go in there. He wrote a lot of books, and he's a really cool guy. So I'm kind of offering this to you as the backdrop on the Maurice Sosin picture, that this is not a posture, I hope, not a posture about using keywords to try to performatively talk about, I don't know, whatever people talk about, but actually trying to get in there with the building blocks of things, get in there with the soil of things, and be together and start trying to figure out how to get off that cliff. I just wanted to throw in here one of the cycles that we would have taught the kids. They're calling this a biogeochemical cycle. I'm calling it a nutrient cycle. But you can see how the sun feeds the tree. They didn't put water droplets, but you can imagine the roots go down. There's multiple different versions of fungi, digesting things, connecting things. Animals make poop. It goes into the earth, and things cycle. There's a real beautiful circularity to it. I find that, like Joe Louis, endlessly delightful. And that informs the cycle I was doing here, which I think is a parallel cycle. You know, Freud was really into talking about nature. He loved talking about mushrooms. He also talked about how the unconscious was like the bears in Yellowstone, and that you were never going to be able to control them. You just had to kind of keep them fenced in a bit. And so I like thinking about psychoanalysis as a kind of natural science. And one where we are animals in nature and learning how we as animals work. But my guiding principle that I think about is something called the triple bottom line economy. And this is questioning, you know, the linearity of what we have now, which is you make as much stuff as you can, and that's it. This is kind of saying that not only can you look at an economic bottom line, but you also have to include an environmental bottom line and think about if what you're making could be disrupting or destroying anything in any of those other soil, water, or other cycles that are key to being on Earth. And then societally, you know, including social justice, to make sure that we're not treating people like poop, you know, like we're not just getting rid of people, but actually incorporating them into the design. So at the end of the day, as I talk about these projects, you're going to see I'm always, people ask, well, how did you know to do that project? Sometimes these things just sort of happen where like these three circles line up in my mind, and then I basically kind of start hanging around trying to figure out how to do something. And then I would say the key to that is just like lying your age to get into the military. I don't really wait for someone to say yes. You know, I just sort of start trying. So the first one was the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. I was working with I like to work with a lot of green builders and people do environmental design. I think it's very elegant because it's design that works on incorporating these systems and cycles into buildings, into cities, how we deal with water, waste, everything, energy. And Haiti had been hurt with a massive earthquake. It's a fascinating country that was one of the first to break free of enslavement, but also, I think, really punished for doing that. And there's a lot of deforestation, and so there's a lot of soil depletion. It's really hard to grow food. At the same time, there's no sanitation system. And you can see that with the cholera outbreak that happened in 2011, that there's no way that people just think about where to put poo. And I could give a whole talk on this. I actually did give a talk on this at another APSA meeting. But it's a country where there just hasn't had infrastructure put in place to deal with those things. So this is a picture, I was taking a lot of picture of the pipes to nowhere. So a lot of money had been spent on pipes, but they didn't go anywhere as I was driving around. And then this shirt I love, it says in Haitian Creole, Haiti isn't poor. And I think that's the right attitude. And when I was there, a number of Haitians were, very sweetly and politely saying, why don't you go home and deal with your poo? And take some of these many people hanging around us with you. And I agreed. So I wrote about it. I tried to help with writing some documents on green redevelopment in Haiti. And sometimes that's a way you can help. But I did make a Google Tech Talk. You can find it online, Envisioning a Sustainable Future. And I presented this idea of redwoods and seeds and the circularity of things and the problem of having a linear way of thinking and throwing out people and throwing out stuff. And then that was over, kind of, or it sort of spread, sort of didn't, A bunch of people told me it was too conceptual, but getting it refined down into that really sloppy donut has taken this long. But then Occupy Wall Street hit. I don't know if you guys remember that, but suddenly in New York City, there were people who just took over Wall Street and started sleeping outside and demanding that Wall Street not, continue to have this ever widening gap between haves and have-nots. And I was walking through, it was actually at Justin Herman Plaza, just a couple blocks away, in case you want to see where it was, across the street from the Ferry Building. And I asked some of the young people there, I used to go to punk shows in LA as a kid, so I was like, hey guys, and they were like, what? But I asked them, how's it going? And a young woman had been dosed against her will with LSD as a prank, and she got really psychotic in the camp. And if you remember how that went, there were these really, if you looked at how those camps were supposed to run, it was very consensual and people were all deciding together kind of democratically. But in this camp, it was like might equals right, silencing women, silencing anybody who was considered weak. It was very, very scary. And so I actually offered them, because I had done an internship at San Francisco General Hospital, I was like, that sounds like a call night. I said, do you guys want help with de-escalating violence? Because they were worried about calling the police and they didn't want the camp shut down. So I started going down every Tuesday night and running a group called Composting Anger. This was because, I don't know who was doing this, but people were just smashing buildings and smashing glass and shooting up, and it was really gross, and I was really worried it would get on TV. It's so naive about what gets on TV. I was worried it would get on TV. But I didn't think it was a good look for San Francisco. I didn't think it was a good look for things I care about, that I'm working on. And I went there every Tuesday night, and I combined a Michael Ballant idea of, he created groups with primary caregivers, or he called them general practitioners, where they talk about how they're reacting to their patients, and then they work together on how to deal with their reactions, because there's this slow realization in primary care that a lot of the patients actually have somatization disorders or somaticizing psychiatric and emotional problems, and it's coming out as medical complaints. So I actually chose to create that with them, and then to also think about this as a Beyond style working group. So Beyond talked a lot about how groups devolve, fall apart, become very primitive and can destroy each other. Or he talked about how they can become working groups, work together collaboratively. And he was a tank commander in World War I. In World War II, he was a military psychiatrist who was advising on how to find the people who would be most talented leaders no matter what their training levels were. And I was like, yeah, I want to find the people who are really good no matter what their training levels are. So some of these guys are unhoused, or travelers who live outside a lot of the time. But they were real talented folks. And just by doing this, we were actually doing a lot of metta practice, which is a loving kindness Buddhist practice too. They were able to de-escalate the camp. And we did one intervention where the women would sleep in the middle of a circle and the men slept around them so that they could kind of signal to these violent folks that that wasn't okay. A lot of the people who were in the camp had been beat up as kids by fathers and stepfathers. And so they kind of realized, oh, I think I'm getting paralyzed because I can't tell if that's my stepdad or just a guy being scary. And so just kind of realizing, I didn't say things like you might be getting dissociated, but just being empowered in that way, they were able to set more limits. It was really important to them not to call authorities, and they didn't. And it became a very stable, steady camp to the point that it was hosed out by City of San Francisco because, if it's wild enough, you can arrest a bunch of people, but if they're kind of just playing guitar, it's really hard. That takes me to the primary care psychiatry consultation program. So I'd done these things, but I was thinking, I really wanted to be working in the environmental world. I think it's actually kind of not easy to explain to the environmental sustainability world why a psychoanalyst would be there. And when in doubt, sometimes I just go back with my peeps. I really love healthcare folks, and I even love hospitals, even if it's horrible. It's a weird thing I realized about myself. Can somebody help me click onto? So I'm going to show you a little video about my team because, don't do that. So Nicole's going to show you a little video about my team. California Healthcare Foundation wanted to make a video about this team. It was really amazing. There were these healthcare innovation dollars to make out-of-the-box thinking mental health programs. And suddenly I saw this pro tip, letter on LinkedIn, do you want to do this job? And I was like, yes, it's like my dream job. It's so remarkable. So I started working in 2016 in Alameda County. And it's really hard to explain to people what we do, but we work directly with primary care providers, therapists, and the support staff who help make these primary clinics run. There's about 8 of them or more in Oakland, Hayward, Fremont, counties to the east. And I'm embedded in 4 of them. There's folks in the room today with whom I work in these clinics who are amazing and who I think are also really excited by this work. And I didn't get this video made. My boss at the time got it made, but I realized it was really hard to explain to people. I'm not going to see patients. I'm going to teach you how to see patients because nobody is trained to see patients. And I know this isn't a good way to do this, but nobody can do this. So somehow we're going to sort of do this. And then the way that I've been able to make that psychoanalytic is to de-emphasize medications for kids and to emphasize kind of like just basic good treatment, which is talking to them, talking to their families, making sure you have a proper case formulation, and really holding back on starting medicines before beginning psychotherapy and seeing if it can work. Also working with the primary care providers, some of whom physicians, a lot of young nurse practitioners, on understanding that you are a dose of medicine, your presence, and coming in for regular meetings, even if they're 15 minutes, can have a very, very containing impact. Might not have to start medicines because once those get started and once a diagnosis gets on a chart, it's kind of there forever, I've noticed. So I like to give them a real shot at a really crisp, clean diagnosis because some of them are going to get them and that's fine. I mean, that's life. But I found that once this micro documentary was made, people got my job.
There are many Californians who are not receiving the behavioral health care services that they need. There is not a sufficient number of psychiatrists to provide the services for everyone who has this need in California.
20 to 30% of my patients in my clinic have psychiatric problems. A lot of them are undiagnosed, and that is very challenging for me. because I cannot fix patients' diabetes, COPD, or cardiovascular problems without fixing their mental health problems.
A lot of times our providers, there may be a high turnaround or they may be recent graduates and they may not be completely comfortable yet in terms of the medication prescriptions for psychiatric illnesses.
We know that when behavioral health conditions are not recognized, when they're not addressed, when they're not treated, that can have a tremendously negative impact in many other aspects of an individual's life. We thought that we could expand our reach by investing in the hiring of a team of psychiatrists that could enhance the capacity of our primary care partners to provide psychiatric care to those with milder or moderate conditions.
This job is all about teamwork, and it's divided into two types of teams. One are the teams that we see on a weekly basis, the primary care providers, the behavioral health providers, and then the other team is the PCPCP team.
PCPCP, the Primary Care Psychiatry Consultation Program, it is a team of psychiatrists who provide consultation to primary care doctors. They're providing consultation to other behavioral health care staff.
The idea of these two teams is that if I don't know the answer to a question in the clinic team setting, then I have this whole second level of a team to ask the other psychiatrists how would they handle this situation. And so there's lots of layers that keep stepping up the level of expertise.
I deal with sometimes very complex patients who are not improving with therapy alone. The fact that I can consult Dr. Bagwar on complex cases, on diagnostic issues, on medication issues, side effects, has been really helpful.
Having multiple people working on caring for a patient is so much less taxing to an individual provider when you're on a team. When you're doing the consulting work we're doing versus seeing patients in private practice or an inpatient setting, you're seeing so many more patients. So the quantity of what we are doing is actually a lot greater.
We're seeing improved capacity to diagnose behavioral health conditions and to make referrals where appropriate.
I feel that when needed, help is around the corner. That helps me feel very comfortable in providing care to my patients.
So, you know, I realized in this that something had been happening that I realized I've been doing, which is you do something, you capture it, and you put it out there. You do something, you capture it, and you put it out there. And I was kind of struggling with how am I going to do my work. You know, a lot was starting to happen politically that was more actively going against sort of maybe how I would want to do things. And so I had to really think about, well, what do I have that I can work with and just keep feeding? And I kept thinking about this lecture I had made in 2015 that I just found hilarious and fun and amazing, almost to the point where I don't feel like I wrote it. I felt like it kind of downloaded into me one day, and then I found the clip art to capture it, which is this Kitty Bunny talk. And I had started giving it to residents at UCSF at San Francisco General in 2015, called the Kitty Bunny talk, because it was a way to try to talk about the transference and countertransference that can arise in very, very high voltage situations where maybe the staff doesn't know how to skillfully intervene at a violence moment and can, you know, trip a wire that can be very hurtful to somebody in need and make them feel like they're in an especially unsafe place rather than a safe place. And so to speak about that by saying, you know, whether or not you feel like a powerful person, in those settings, if you have the degree or the power, you are the predator. And if somebody needs you, they're the prey. So you're like a cat and they're like a rabbit. And you can kind of find a different posture where you're signaling that your claws are in and your teeth are in and that you're not scratching or biting and you're going to do your best. That can be a position to hold. And part of this county job was, which is just a part-time job, by the way. I have a whole psychotherapy and psychoanalysis practice too. But I just I tend to throw myself into things. And so I started giving this talk to the UCSF medical students that I teach, and some of them are here today. Some of them jumped ship from other specialties into psychiatry. I started hearing from a lot of them that they were in the ER or in these various spaces, and they were like, oh my God, beta elements. Like, this thing happens, like happened to me in my child fellowship, where suddenly you're like, and that I was so touched that they would like think of me and let me know rather than quitting. So during COVID, I was finishing my analytic training, and I decided to turn the Kitty Bunny Talk into a video. And I don't know if you know this, but anybody under the age of 20 is like a digital native, and they're brilliant, and they can like turn your stuff into videos, and I love them. So this is, yeah. So I talked in this talk about how beta elements are just basically poo. By the way, I tried to get this talk animated, and all these people were like, I'm not doing poo. You have to do it without poo. And I was like, that's the whole point. A kitty and a bunny. This cat has a stethoscope, but you could have a rake, you could have bus driving, you could have any essential worker, frontline worker, anywhere, anything. And during COVID, we kind of hopefully we all realized how much everything we do is reliant on them. And they reminded me of my grandfather, like everything he did. There's so many people that make our lives work for us, and as things were melting down, and they're melting down nationally and internationally, I thought, reinforcing and strengthening frontline workers around the globe could be a way that maybe we could shift off of this kind of chaotic, explosive weirdness we're engaged in. I'm starting to think I want to call it internetitis, because boy, are we acting weird. But what I think we really have to do is do the triple bottom line, right? Like, we have to pull it together, all of us. We just have to. I don't think it's optional. So, choose your favorite frontline worker here. And by the way, choose your favorite family frontline worker here, or you. I kind of think we're frontline workers. I never realized that until I realized during COVID how hard it was working. And that's how I'm doing that. So I'm going to show you, wait, stop it. Nicole, Gen Z, help. I'm going to show you a clip from my Kitty Bunny Talk video, and I want to just tell you, as of early this morning, the Kitty Bunny Talk is live. You could just put Kitty Bunny Talk in your phone or your screen, device of your choice. And it's on YouTube, and I have a channel called Profound Sustainability. And we're filming a video today that's going to be on that site. So this is going to be this ongoing project. We're going to make stuff, capture it, put it up, and then look for the seeds in it. And make stuff and capture and put it up. Something's going to go wrong. I'm going to get upset, and then we're going to alpha function. We're going to look for the seeds, and then whoever wants to come hang out. What else are you doing? Okay, so I'm going to play this little thing for you. The video is a half-hour talk, and I sort of mean it as like me trying to capture this very sweet pep talk my dad gave me about shit sprays in my child fellowship. Because it was very containing, and there's like a weird way that psychoanalysts can say terrible things and also make you feel better. And so, yeah.
Let's talk about burnout. Ever wonder how a job you once loved became such a painful, demoralizing experience? Have you committed yourself to helping the world and the people in it, but feel your well-intentioned efforts can be dismissed, unappreciated, exploited, or even pointless? These painful feelings could actually signal something beyond what we call burnout. They might indicate the presence of unaddressed trauma in the folks you serve. Trauma cannot always be detected in a blood test or an X-ray, but it can be a powerful driving force that underlies a help receiver's difficulties. Trauma plays by its own rules, and it's very easy for even the most seasoned frontline worker to feel out of their league, even if you work in an environment that has already committed itself to providing trauma-informed care. The painful, unspoken truth is that being around trauma can trigger strong reactions, not just in survivors, but in the help givers that aim to relieve their suffering. Take a look at managing compassion fatigue in trauma-informed care. Originally designed for medical staff and trainees, it illuminates for many kinds of essential workers hidden aspects of what could be making your job that you love so stressful. Get ready for emojis, beta elements, Wilfred Beyond, kitties, bunnies, kitties who feel like bunnies, and Compost, because they'll all be coming to you in their full clip art glory to help you do the work you love.
Guess who did the sound mixing on that joint? Yeah, you're like you. It's true.
Last one, guys.
I'm going to show you what happened next, and I'm so grateful to the American Psychoanalytic Foundation because I made this video, and I actually made another version, and I have family in Los Angeles who are creatives, and they were like, this is really boring. And so the one that you see up there is my attempt at making it less boring. I don't know if it cuts it for, LA standards, but I did actually want to animate the Kitty Bunny talk and realize it's $10,000 a minute to animate a talk. And they were like offering to do stuff I could have figured out with a Gen Zer. I don't mean to be rude. So I used the money to hire a really, really talented Chilean psychologist to put the Kitty Bunny talk into really beautiful Spanish. I speak Spanish, but I wanted a Spanish speaker, and she has such a beautiful voice. And so we figured out how to do that and figured out with her, because it took forever, how to set it up so that we could start doing it to put it into a lot of languages, even if we don't understand the language using technology. And then I had a bit of money left, and I was like, I should make a micro-documentary. So I found Preeti Deb, who's in the room and filming this today from Zeno and Amo Films, and her amazing team met with me and some of my colleagues from my county job, and we went to a park my mom played in as a little girl in Oakland, where there's redwoods, and we shot this little piece, and we called it Compost Happens.
I think that there's a lot that we see in the front lines, a lot of things that we hear, a lot of tragedies, a lot of sad stories.
The pandemic, it's created a lot more challenges than what the families used to deal with before.
If they are very scared, then I often feel their fear first. It's incredibly difficult to see through some of the baggage that everybody brings into the moment.
We don't have enough child psychiatrists, adult psychiatrists, psychotherapists, primary care providers. We need so many more people on the front line.
Being the trauma zone is stressful. Your body is tense. It's heartbreaking.
Scary, daunting, big task.
Debilitating, excruciating.
Traumatic, but also a lot of room for resiliency.
Compassion fatigue can come out in different ways. Sometimes it comes with people being short-tempered at work. Other times people call out sick a lot more than they normally would.
Frontline workers, as kind of almost angelic as they can seem, as saintly as they can be, they're still human. And it can still be a hard day at work. You can still be having trouble at home. And so one of the things I'm really hoping to support most in frontline workers is to have more and more ease with negative feelings or dark feelings, and to learn to breathe into them and to accept that they can be digested or metabolized or broken down, and one can return to being one's highest self.
Kitty Bunny.
No music was playing in my defense.
Kitty Bunny.
Kitty Bunny.
Kitty Bunny.
Kitty bunny?
Kitty bunny.
Kitty bunny. That sounds kind of creepy.
I have so much admiration for people who get on the front line, stay on the front line. Sometimes I wonder as a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst how I can be of use, and so I've really been dedicating the last several years of my career, especially the last two, to trying to find ways to keep people feeling refreshed and replenished and supported on the front line. When you are a patient, you feel at the mercy of the people who are helping you. And I am just enthralled with the idea that in nature, things fully recycle. We don't have waste, we don't have garbage. And in this work, I use the idea of helping the frontline staff to think about composting terrible feelings, because a lot of this is getting a handle on our own feelings so that we can return to being in the service of those we wish to serve.
When you're in the trauma zone, a lot of the times, if you're there, you might notice what is missing is a sense of beauty. My own creativity is a source of that daily dose of beauty that I need to keep waking up every day and doing it again.
Art for me, it's a release. When I'm doing that, I don't have to think about clinic work. I don't necessarily have to think about how the day went. It's me in my element doing what I enjoy doing.
I see life as colorful, and sometimes it's not. And just bringing that out into art, it makes me feel better, it makes me feel complete, and it brings me back to my old self.
The fact that we hear so many awful stories sometimes can easily take a toll. At one point you have to take care of yourself and do some self-care so that you can continue doing the work that you can.
I grew up in a house with a lot of jazz, and so I feel like we should be and on weird dancing. You said don't do it. Don't do it? Okay. Don't look at Michelle. And on violin, Green Apricot MD. Starring as the medical director of Native American Health Center, Niyomatosho! Sitting next to him, Iman Kazaa, facilitator of the Mandarin translation of Kitty Bunny Talk. This isn't, I don't think I'm doing jazz voice. I think I'm being weird. I think I moved into boxing announcer. Monica Zuniga, Spanish. And beautiful. Who else? Where are you? I can't see you. Okay, there's other people in the room. Nicole, thank you. And other people here who I've been just pressuring all week to maybe help me put into Italian or other languages. So we've got English, Spanish, French, Arabic, Western Armenian, Mandarin, Cantonese, and all of them are in various states of being finished, all depending on me and my schedule, or others who want to help. But I am aiming for 20 languages, and to have them on YouTube, and to have them be available to frontline workers wherever, and to have the capacity to build communities wherever, where you could be like my grandpa, and you don't have to know a bunch of fancy stuff. You could have just stormed out of 4th grade, but still know how to do your job so beautifully, Doesn't matter. A lot of smart people on the front line, it doesn't matter. Not everybody got to get an education, That's what's so true in my family. They couldn't afford it, and they were in states of flight. And I feel very blessed to be here. And I want to just say that I talked about my family a lot today because I've been thinking a lot about ancestors and descendants, and feeling a lot of gratitude for all the people whose names I know and whose names I don't know that got me here today, and that got you here today, and how hard they worked, and how we've been in many, as we say in my tradition, narrow places before. And and we can compost that, because I think we're doing it for our descendants, right? I think that the effort is to provide a triple bottom line focused world where systems work interdependently in an interconnected way that makes sense, that is sustainable for people we'll never meet. Yeah. And same with what I think we're trying to do in the psychoanalytic canon of making things, writing things. I'm doing some digital stuff that people can use when we're gone, the way we use the writings of those who are gone to help us. And thank you so much for being here today. So, Rogelio.
Melanie, I was sent to see you by the old people. The day I met you, you were sitting on my right side. That's not the right way. The old people told us that we put the people that we love on the left side, where the heart is. But you were sent to sit down on my right side. And at that moment, you didn't know, I didn't know. But you were sent to that place around noon. And I was sent by the old people that are at home to see you. And we spoke just a little. And I told you stories about your people that was.
You take a microphone, Rogelio, if you're comfortable. Because I think it's important, because we talked about my people and your people.
I told you that I was conceived on November 1943, and I told you I was born in 1944. And I told you about my father, that was a French resistance. My mother is Navajo. I told you, pardon me, because that's the native way to tell you how I feel. And from that moment on, you didn't know me, I didn't know you. From that moment on, I didn't let you go. You have been with me, and you know that.
Yeah.
When you told me about what you were going to do today, I want to hear you. And I wanted to hear you because I wanted to support who you are and where you are. And I want all the people that know you, down the narrow way, we don't die, as you know. We go home. Yes, I grew up on the Navajo culture, the French culture, and the American culture. And all of them are the same to me. That's why I'm here standing up, and I'm grateful. So today, I want to honor you the native way. I am offer gratitude for the people that are walking, for the people that are sleeping, for the people that are dancing and crying. I offer gratitude for the people that are suffering. I am walking for the people and offer gratitude for the ones that are in the hospital and getting ready to go home. And for you, I want you to keep this. We use this on the last ceremony, and when I saw it and we finished offering gratitude, I say, I want to take it to you today. That's why I'm here. This was made by a little girl, and she smiled when I told her I was going to bring it to you. So she said it to you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. I was a counselor in training at a Jewish day camp in a part of LA that is burned down now. And my best friend was Native, and her stepdad was Jewish and told her she had to get a job. And we became friends. I started going to powwows. And during COVID, I just had the strongest urge to reach out to her, and I reached out to her. And she said, oh, I'm coming to the Bay Area. I'm going to a drumming in Castro Valley. And on the way driving in, there was a radio program about the Windtalkers. I don't know if you know about the Windtalkers. Really important people in World War II, Navajo, who spoke a special language that helped. It was a language that couldn't be cracked. And when I met Rogelia, I hope it's okay if I you said, you know, my family were the wind talkers. And I was like, and he told me he has a Native American museum in Fremont with buttons from Auschwitz. Yeah. And I don't know that more words should be said, but thank you. But when I say that, I tell you how hard I worked to be placed at Native American Health Center to do pediatric psychiatric consultation with Dr. Omatosho. Maybe you see why. Anyway, there's a mic. I've been asked to guide you to it. And you feel free to call on me, but feel free to call on anybody in this room, because a lot of them are here if you have questions. What, except Iman? No. Even Iman? No. Whatever you want. But please feel free to come up and ask questions, or say comments, or I could teach you songs about poo. It starts with an S and ends with a T. It comes out of you and it comes out of me. I know what you're thinking, it could be called that. But to be scientific, we call it scat.
Mostly it's wow, wow. Inspirational, fun, upbeat, down to earth, and deadly serious too. And thank you for making it so, making it so graspable. My name is Ann Dart. I'm from Portland, Oregon. We had the pleasure of hosting your dad once when he came up to teach, tell him hello. And we, you know, I'm just so impressed. And I know he must be so proud.
He would remind you that my initials spell M-E-L. Because in our tradition, you don't name children after their parents, but you can find a workaround.
Everything really resonated with me, and I really enjoyed how you created these micro-documentaries as a way of having your work last after, like, for generations to come.
Baked into the soil.
I just wanted to ask about your decision-making and having it be digital as opposed to other mediums you could have chosen. Why did you choose that?
Right, thank you. Maybe like Aaron Ratner, who's running the American Psychoanalyst, I think, or he's editing. I've always wondered why people don't understand how badass psychoanalysis is. And I've thought possibly it's because all our articles are behind a huge wall, which I understand because the journals need to stay in business, right? I also, probably looking back, always wanted to be an artist. A lot of people in my family are artists. But that's just a very luxurious thing to be, right? So they all had day jobs. So I was like, what day job are you getting? And then, my dad was like, if you're a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, it's like basically an artist. And I was like, okay. So I think as time moved on, I just wanted to start making art, and I guess almost like medical art or mental health art. Because I love TV. And I love film, and I love art, and I love dance, and I love painting. And I think there's so many ways to learn. Maybe one of the moments we learned the most in this room was in the silence, right? So I wanted to open up ways to, I think because my father swept me so hard on if my work was psychoanalytic. Oh boy, did he, dude. I had to like keep going back to it and proving like proof of concept. And I'm kind of grateful he did. And then I just thought, wow, this is contained into a kind of small thing and you can make some art out of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry to calm like these little videos are, but you know, that's the goal is, you know, even, I'm sorry, Sarah, I'm not done. Even just becoming a person in the world is, you know, a bit of an art piece, right? Yeah, because we're composing. Psychoanalysis is very artistic in this way, so I wanted to push the medium. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Preeti, filmmaker, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker.
Madeleine, it's been such a joy and pleasure to work with you and be able to create this art with the art that you do every day. I have a question really as a mom, because when I worked on this with you, I realized, you know, it's not just the frontline workers, it's all of us. And as I shared this film with my community, the way it resonated with people was amazing to see. My question to you is really, when you take a fourth grader who's having these beta elements and having these poopy feelings, what are—
Did you say poopy or boopy? Sorry, I'm a child psychiatrist. Play therapist, sorry.
Yeah, poopy.
Poopy.
What is the language we can use for young people to help them take this as a lifelong skill?
Well, I'd be curious what people in the room think. I'd be happy to discuss it. One of the reasons I made the slideshow into a video was because there had been a community health worker at Tiburcio Vasquez, which you saw in the first micro-documentary, whose 10-year-old daughter, I guess Betty had gone home and talked about my slideshow and being a kitty in a bunny suit. And she had talked about it at dinner, and her daughter apparently had sort of used this being stuck as a kitty in a bunny suit to manage a playground bully. And that was very moving to me, that it had gotten a kid out of a tough spot. And so I actually did make this so a kid could look at it. Yeah, because, you know, it's well, maybe here's how I would say it. You know, as somebody who's interested in neuropsychoanalysis and animals and believes we're animals. You know, animals can communicate with each other without the language we understand to be language. And they communicate non-verbally, probably with a lot of images they can splash to each other and vibes even. And so I would say that we have these nervous systems. And psychoanalysis, you don't have to say the psychoanalysis thing, but we are still thin-skinned no matter how much we're told we're not. And that if you're getting funny feelings that don't feel like yours, you know, they'll feel really strong and really awful. And then you kind of got to ask yourself, is this me? Or is this foreign? Does this feel foreign to me, or like a foreign body? And then to start to kind of toggle between maybe this is me and a part of me that I don't know about yet or is bubbling up from an unconscious place inside me. But maybe, just maybe, that human animal threw into this human animal some parts of them that they don't understand yet, that they are overwhelmed by, maybe even scared of. Maybe they want me to digest it for them or just hand it to me because they're scared. And you don't have to take it. And you don't have to slam it back into them by fighting or anything, but you can move it back and put a poo emoji on it that's smiling.
Hopefully we can get you back to those outdoor ed places.
Oh, please do. Yeah. I'm glad you guys are asking questions because we have at least a half hour left.
you're a hard act to follow. And the videoing is a little daunting. But I think that
If you want to be cut out, just tell us.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I'm not saying I want to be cut out.
What you're talking about, what you're doing, is in my mind, in my heart, exactly what psychoanalysis needs. What we need that infusion of just making things simple.
Yeah.
It's not, we make it complicated, and it's not, when I'm trying to understand psychoanalysis, I find a way to make it simple in my mind. And that's how I can use it. You know, and so I think that this is so fabulous for us, and I think that this allows us to be more meaningful in the world. And so I just wanted to say that. And the other thing that came to me, one of the pictures I was struck by is your life cycle with the tree and the cow and the levels of ground, the sun and the levels of ground. And I don't know this, and so this might be my imagination, but I think it might be right, and you referenced it. There's that bottom level, and there was this kind of blob all along the bottom level, if I saw the picture right. And then there was the mushrooms, the fungus growing.
Yeah.
But if I understand it right, all that fungus is all interconnected.
Yeah, the mycorrhiza.
The what?
The mycorrhiza.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that interconnectedness is the thing that we don't know and we don't get to. But it's there, and it still operates, and I think that's a part of what you have to say.
I'm glad you saw that. I'm writing a kid's book involving mycorrhiza because I just find it endlessly inspiring. There's an underground network of fungi that link between root systems of various plants and distribute nutrients and balance out nutrients so that the forest floor can grow collaboratively and be nourished. And I kind of think of us that way, and I think of that as sort of, you know, because with my county job, it was like everything's a mess all the time, and everybody was always leaving. And so just staying there like an analyst, you're in this room, it's Mitzi. Just staying there like an analyst and not leaving sometimes is the interpretation, right? I'm not leaving. I guess you could, you know. But just to be thinking about making way stations where people hold nutrients, share nutrients, figure out where nutrients go next, seems like an incredibly beautiful metaphor, and maybe something we can honor we've already been doing. And that's why I wanted to acknowledge my father today. Definitely, he said, I need a day with your analysts, and I was like, oh, not one day, sir, not one day. But just the gratitude I feel to my teachers, and the desire I have to, you know, be that mycorrhizal link into younger generations to pass the nutrients.
I'm Chuck Fisher. Madeleine, I wanted to tell a very brief Madeleine Lansky story and ask you two questions. So I had of learning from him in a study group, and in this study group, we would usually manage to go out to dinner, and your dad would invariably, came to really count on this, your dad would invariably order a martini and stand up at the table and quote a Dorothy Parker.
Oh, God. Did he say he had low blood alcohol before he ordered it? That was another thing.
Well, I think it was insufficient.
Yeah, he'd say, I have low blood alcohol and I'm going to need a martini.
Yeah, so the Dorothy Parker poem goes, I think I will have a martini, 2 at the very most, 3 and I'm under the table, 4 and I'm under the host.
At which point I zoom in, I'm like, Dad, not a 21st century thing we're doing anymore. Okay, give me the next story.
That's one of my stories. So the two questions have to do with your work with the Occupy
San Francisco.
And that is, at first, it seems to me incredibly courageous, incredibly scary. So you described going every Tuesday night. So the first question is, how did you stay safe? And the second question is, and how did you create and maintain a boundary so that you were neither alienated, rejecting or rejected, nor taken too far in an unsustainable way? So how did you accomplish those two things?
Maybe because I was an accomplished boxer by the age of 8. You know, my grandmother, my grandfather's wife, my grandmother was very pretty, at least to me. And she always wore kind of cruddy outfits. And I would always wonder why. You know, she didn't doll up like her sisters. And as time grew on, and I understood trauma because I was around traumatized people all the time. I understood that not wearing makeup and looking a little is a coat of armor for a woman walking in the world, as is having a husband who's a boxer. Yeah. And so I thought about that a lot, especially growing up in Los Angeles, where looks are when I grew up, it was like really, really important. There was something in me that felt rebellious about that. And I think that I started going to punk shows when I was a kid. I went to punk shows because they seemed like my grandfathers to be talking about fascism. And I felt like this strange sense of safety about, you know, in that space, there's like a small minority of people who are pro-fascism, but most of them are kind of kids like us, actually, who would come and beat up the Nazi punks who would try to take over the shows. It was like pretty dynamic and wild. And I was at a show where I went into a slam pit. Now they call them mosh pits, we call them slam pits. And someone said, you should really get out of here, you're gonna get your butt kicked. And I was like, no, I won't. And like very quickly the music started and people started kicking my butt. And I anonymously, a couple young men just like lifted me out of this like really scary like cyclone of anonymously beating each other up people. And my knee dislocated, like I was injured. I really could have been trampled. It was very, very scary. But I think it kind of, there was like some weird way I just got this like understanding of like high voltage chaos, and sort of weirdly intuitively understood that there's like grandpas everywhere who will just like grab you. And not all kids got grabbed. So there might be, you know, it might be kinahora that I end up on a newspaper in one of these situations being dead. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay, don't get excited. That might happen, but I guess there's maybe a part of me, one of my favorite Fugazi songs is called Margin Walker. And there's a part of me, you know these albums. I think that's why I went into medicine, to be honest, because I didn't really want to live in the world of the chaotic, but I wanted to be like right next door and kind of figuring out like the physics of it. And my experience of the physics of it is if you're kind and gracious and treat people like they're human beings and are interested, the violence goes way down. And I do remember one night I wore like, I did not dress like a doctor. I dressed like in my, like my outdoor ed gear kind of. I didn't bring my dog. I actually was worried what would happen. I didn't want people to be all over my dog. That was a feeling I had. But I remember one guy was screaming in my face, and I said, I don't know where I got this, but I think it's the grandpa vibes. I said, I'm going to need more space. And he said, and I kind of, whenever I'm scared, I just act like grandpa. And I think it's really confusing to have, you know, a cisgendered heterosexual woman just like pull out her inner like street tough man. I say, I'm gonna need space. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm bipolar. Yeah. And I was like, I really respect you for sharing that. I was like, not everybody knows that they need to think about where they are in space. And he's like, I work very hard at it. And I was like, I wish other people were as smart as you. And he's like, right? You know, so I think this is just like this, like in the moment, you know, I think you probably noticed I act pretty goofy, but I'm also just like trying to receive what's happening in the moment. And I do have one rule for you, Chuck, which is if there's meth, get out of there. Like I'm not negotiating with chemicals, but if it's just people who are in a high voltage state, I think there's a line between war and play. And I was the play therapist with the Nerf swords. I did a lot of Nerf sword fights in my office. I've had PT for it. So I think I'm always like a little trying to bump things back into play. And then if it's really safe, I'm getting out. I went to medical school in New York City when it was still really rough, and I did learn how to look like I was on meth, which is incredibly effective. And I'll show you how later if you'd like lessons on how to look like you're psychotic and on meth.
What about the boundary part?
The boundary part?
Yeah.
I just say...
To not get over-involved or under-involved, but somehow continuingly involved in a regular...
Not over-involved, not under-involved. I think I try to stay away from people's individual stories and take a note from Michael Ballant, which is I am not your therapist. I am not trying to get into your inner life. I am not your healer. We are not doing the deep work. I do have names. They're amazing. But what we're doing here is we have a task. So I do a lot of storytelling, and I'm doing it today. I do it in the films. This is what we're doing. We're doing Occupy. We're doing Occupy in a non-violent way. I need you to step back. I need you to give me space. What I'd let you know, I kind of, and it's funny, I was getting gas in a kind of scary neighborhood, and this guy seemed really scary, and he was like, hey! And I said, what? And he's like, you remind me of my first grade teacher. So I kind of, that is like the nicest compliment, sir, thank you. Was she really pretty? And he's like, no. No, I didn't do that. I do crack a lot of jokes, though. But I think I decide my boundaries and state my boundaries. And I found like the hardest people to have boundaries with are the people you really care the most about, right? So like out in the world, I'm like at the punk show, and I'm having a straight. You know, I want to have a nice night. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for a phenomenal presentation. The whole time I sat back there, I was thinking, goddess. She's a goddess. I mean, a beautiful, brilliant, composting, psychoanalytic goddess.
Paid for by Madeleine Lansky. No, I'm sorry, Robin.
And so I wonder, as you're talking about this S blank blank T, that's right, S-H-I-T? What? Yeah, the poop.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about it and we're thinking about it, I'm allowing myself to think about it. And then I think about all the S blank blank T or poop that's out there in the world. How can we use your ideas to help us
Here comes Grandpa.
to digest what's going on and to end up composting and loving?
Yeah. You're going to want to get that Joe Louis picture with the gloves and put it on your screensaver on your phone. I'm not saying hit anyone. I'm just saying you're okay with a fantasy or two.
And you're courageous and fearless. Well, my father was also a boxer. So I get where you're coming from. But it's like the whole world, I mean, we're struggling.
It's so, oh, I have the answer for you, and I think it's because I left it out. There's this idea, this wonderful kind of eco-philosopher named Joanna Macy, that we're in an era called the Great Turning. And in the Great Turning, we are moving from being a carbon-based world and a fossil-fueled world into a sustainable world. And that this has to happen, and it's going to be a mess. It's going to be an S show. It is. And so I would say to you that it's going to be an S show. It is. And so what? And I get the 3 a.m. wake ups. Are we all waking up at 3 a.m.? Say hi to your friends when you wake up at 3 a.m. Hey guys, because I think we're animals and we can feel it. But what I try to keep doing is sort of what I tried to learn clinically, which is like every case goes south, right? Like there's always a point where you're like, oh my God. And to just keep choosing what you're going to do, keep choosing what you're going to do, keep choosing what you're going to do, and talk to your dad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, hi.
Italiano.
Yes, New York. On camera, so I make a commitment to help you with that.
It's so hard to find Italian.
So now we're gonna
Buonissimo.
I also have a question. We started talking about this. I teach undergraduate students and graduate students from very disadvantaged backgrounds, traumatizing situations that want to be helpers. Have you thought about using this or any experience in using this in the training piece? So before they become helper and they get burned out.
Well, this has been, thank you. This has been incorporated into the onboarding at some of the primary care clinics that I work in. And I'm making it available on YouTube so any of you could teach it. You can have it. You can have it with commercials. And at some point I might try to make, depending on if there's a response, like an academy. And academies based around languages. And if you want me to be involved with discussing it with people, I can, or we can talk about how you can discuss it. And can I tell this story, Michelle? Okay. So I was teaching this in primary care clinics, and one of my, is it weird to call you a muse? One of my inspirations, one of my thought partners is here, who has this incredibly hard job in the clinics of actually helping the patients get the care they need and make their appointments, helping them find like food, clothing, and shelter. It's really, really hard. And the patients are from safety net populations. They're very, very traumatized. And then, the clinic is like, do it quickly. I don't care if there aren't any beds, food, or anything. Figure it out. And so Michelle, I was sitting next to her, and we were working in Berkeley at a clinic, and she said, I just don't feel like I'm doing a good job. This was another reason I made the video. And I was like, you're doing an amazing job. This is just insurmountable. And I actually gave you the James Groves 1978 article called The Hateful Patient. And you said to me, no one told me that this was a possibility that some patients were hateful. No one told me. And so just then, another one of your colleagues, Sunny, came in and was like, oh, you should see the Kitty Bunny talk. And so he and I think you and Amaya arranged to have your boss show it in San Leandro to your whole team. You and Amaya took paid time off to drive to see it. And I will be forever grateful to you for honoring me. So I think that my experience is it's very teachable, and now you can have get to teach, and it's going to be in Italian. So we're going to Italy. Yeah. So I think that this is something we're going to co-create in real time of how we're going to use it. Yeah, thank you. My mentor is here.
I just want to say, Madeleine, it's such a pleasure to see you here in this room and in this conference with these people, because I think you're a living example of growth and finding one's self in an analytic way and in a unique way that's yours. And I remember a time when we first met where you weren't sure, where you were not so sure this would be soil that you could grow in.
Yeah.
And you've come full circle. I don't think I don't think you have to go to beta at once, but I guess they happen in that circle.
They do when you're me.
It's been a pleasure to watch you, and it's a particular pleasure today. And I'm sure all the boxers and the people in your family are cheering for you, as am I.
Thank you. Thank you for teaching me. Dr. Paulson was my mentor for the Sorry for the girl. Sorry, I made a thing. I won the Canon of the Community Award. APSA has a lot of awards, and I try to get all of them. But I actually said I'm doing this job in the county, and I want to work with someone who knows a lot about balance. And we worked together for a year, and you were my anchor. And I really was like, this is my heart's desire to do this work, and I just don't know. And you helped me, plant seeds and water and sunlight them, so thank you.
I normally do not speak in public, but I wanted to say that your father, Mel Lansky, taught me in my first year and was so wonderful because he was his use of metaphor, his use of play, his use of imagination. And he would talk about Mozart, The Marriage of Figaro, which I love. And I'm totally dorky. I love classical music only. But I love that, and he was wonderful and imaginative, and you are over the top imaginative. I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. I grew up in a house where I had permission. I had permission to be artistic and love ideas. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I'm from Mexico City, and I don't really know. I think something very beautiful is happening in this presentation. And some time ago, not too long ago, before COVID, it was one of my dreams to do something like this in Mexico City with people at the hospitals. Then at some point, I sort of lost that dream. Reality hits you, but thank you, because this gives me, that hope that something may be done with people who are at the front line, and I think you've noticed that there's something about this talk that is touching something very personal with me.
Thank you for bringing that into the room for us.
I don't know what to say, but just thank you, because seeing that this is possible in another country, but that it can be done in a way, it really brings a sense of hope in a moment that I think is very difficult. It's a very difficult moment right now, I think. Being here in the U.S., So thank you, I would say, because we really need hope. And just the last thing I'll say, I've had a patient who's been telling me about having a family member at a public hospital in Mexico. And that's kind of what I say when reality hits you. The situation is so difficult. You think, oh, giving psychological or maybe a reverie to these people, or beta elements. It's already become so difficult when it's like the health system is falling apart, and it feels like things are falling apart. So that's kind of like where I'm going. Hope it makes sense. But thank you very much.
Thank you. And I like watching you be there reacting was actually like a huge honor. So thank you for being here. And thank you for.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be part of this.
And by the way, we have a Spanish version. I still got to put music on it, but so we can talk about bringing it into Mexico. And Monica teaches in Mexico City and Mexico.
I would love to.
I would
the translation, actually, I think it was a beautiful work that we did together. And I have shown to a lot of health workers. And it's so, I think it's so easy to understand concepts that otherwise, whenever you mention the word psychoanalytic, people get kind of freaked out. But after they listened to that and they knew that there were some psychoanalytic concepts on that, really? Where? Which one? So it's an amazing work, like putting something like that, and I have shared with a lot of, of the people that I work, because it's something that happened to them every single day. Yeah. And they are not aware of it until they feel all the emotions that I don't want to be here anymore. I have no more energy to be here. So I get a lot, and thank you for mentioning how hard it is to be in the US nowadays, because I feel that every day. Thank you. Yes, I would love to.
From beta elements to alpha function to seeds, like that. Thank you. And thank you. Procura y bienestar. Yeah.
Well, I have a wish that maybe you could do some other psychoanalytic concepts in a fun way.
Yes.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Maybe Melanie Klein, Flying Bunnies, Bad Breath.
Vomit. Yeah. Were you gonna? Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Louie, coming from LA, private practice Beverly Hills, but really enjoy your star presence, to be fully immersed as a being, excited, performative, you're natural. Love to see you on SNL one day. But similar point to that, I think there's this huge, robust potential, so much beta element, so much substrate in society to be catalyzed by these tools and concepts we have in psychoanalysis and in this new medium of social media. It's such an untapped potential energy there, and so much to affect. Spontaneously, I'm thinking of Kappa, the Chinese sort of bridge, how quickly that nidus point is taking off there. Because there's, it was like a dozen new institutes, 200, 300 newly trained just in the past decade or two. But similar
Chinese
to
American Psychoanalytic Alliance.
Mm-hmm. But this sleeping potential energy of id, of beta element, that if we can, like you, bring these great concepts into coalesced artifact and tool that the masses can use, that is a great public health we can do. So I admire it.
Thank you.
Probably follow in your footsteps a little bit one day. So very cool.
Honey, we'll talk.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole. I'm a master's in social work student, and I think similar to that. I came to this conference. I was invited by the Boston Psychoanalytic Society and Institute, I need a shorter name, to dip my toes into psychoanalysis. I mean, I'm not an analyst, I'm not a candidate, I'm just a girl. And
sitting in front of a bunch of analysts.
And I've sensed a theme since I've been here of like ABSA being like, how do we bring young people in? How do we bring gay people in? How do we bring people of color in? And they're like desperately trying to figure it out. And it's like, here's the answer. Like, make it accessible, make it fun. And people have been asking me throughout the time I've been at this conference, like, oh, have we convinced you? And it's like, most of you haven't. It's hard. It's really hard. We've created a space here, guys. Like, this is being recorded. Cut this out. But you and a lot of the people in this room have made me be like, oh, it's not just this highbrow, you know, inaccessible, intangible thing that is only for rich white men in New York. Like, it's for us, and that's huge.
It's yours.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
And by the way, I was speaking to one of those nervous people, and I was like, I think it's going well. And she said, well, I want to figure out a thing we can do from conference to conference to keep the good feelings going. So now's the time for wish lists. We were teaching our medical home as a secure base on Wednesday. That's how I met Nicole and roped you in. Roped you in, yes. I think what I've kind of learned to do is just fantasize about how I would fix stuff whenever I get really overwhelmed and scared. I kind of start to like play with, like, it's like a game of Tetris. Like, but if I were in control, if I were queen of the universe, and it's sort of how I like let my brain just like organize it so that when somebody says, would you make another thing, or would you, maybe do this or that, I'm like, as a matter of fact, I've got a list. So I would encourage you to start dreaming and start asking. And a lot of people don't care what you want, how you feel, what you need, and are not going to offer anything. But like a few might, and that's all you need, just one. Yeah. Okay, well, I want to end by saying, like, the lines from this meditation we did at Occupy San Francisco, which is this beautiful loving kindness practice, very ancient. In the Tibetan tradition, it's called Maitri practice. And it is, the lore around it is that it was given to monks walking through the forest so that they wouldn't be killed by big animals. And you can learn more about it, or there's recordings somewhere of me teaching it to our frontline workers in June of 2020 as COVID is hitting and everyone's getting incredibly terrified. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you be at ease.